So welcome to this week's Optimal Health Clinic Facebook Live, and the first Facebook Live of 2019. So happy New Year to everyone. And I figured that it's the new year, so we should do a Facebook Live around goal setting. I think the first two Facebook Lives that I did almost exactly 2 years ago were we did quite a lot of discussion around goal setting. So it's definitely, if you're in that kind of period where you're setting goals for the new year, they would be good ones to check out. If you go, a good way to find the OHC Lives, if you go to theoptimumhealthclinic.com, you click on the blog, and we are now, the Facebook Lives are also there available as blog posts. And I think it's probably an easier way of finding content than searching through 2 years of history on the Facebook page. But I specifically want to talk about in this video how to set goals in such a way that you actually feel like you're achieving them. You actually feel like you have a sense of accomplishment. A lot of people with ME chronic fatigue will resonate with the idea of being an achiever, i.e., being someone where we tend to define our self-worth by the things that we do and we achieve in the world. And not being able to consistently kind of commit to goals in a traditional way and follow through on those, can be frustrating. And so you may well, before being ill, might have been the kind of person that would go to the gym in January and commit that you're going to, work out whatever it is, like 4 or 5 times a week. And you'd be one of the people still there in February. So you would be one of the people that doesn't end up, running out of discipline by the 2nd, 3rd week in January. That you're kind of by nature someone that is good at setting goals and being disciplined and following through on those. And so not being able to do that can be a source of significant frustration. And yeah, obviously, if you're measuring your recovery by how much you manage to get yourself to do and achieve on a particular day, then you're likely to be ending up pushing yourself. You're also likely to have a scenario where your activity is not dictated by the actual real energy that you have, but your activity is dictated by some schedule or some set of goals of what you think you should be doing. And that's often unhelpful and often one of the factors that can cause kind of crashes and doing too much. So how can we feel a sense of kind of sustainable achievement in setting goals, and what sort of goals should we be setting? So firstly, setting goals around kind of habits or activities which don't involve pushing yourself, which you know are an important part of facilitating recovery, is helpful. That could be things around remember to take supplements, doing nutritional changes that you need to be making, could be around meditation practice, could be around using stop technique. So whatever it may be, having specific goals that you set around the kind of the behaviors that you want to cultivate, that can be helpful. The next thing is setting goals related to almost kind of counterintuitive goals, like setting goals that you know are going to help you of breaking the patterns that are unhelpful. So if, for example, you have a pattern of not kind of speaking your needs. So let's say that you tend to, when you be around friends and family and you're doing something that perhaps they want you to be doing, or even something that you want to be doing, and your body says it's time to stop. And if you actually stopped, you would rest, you would rebuild your energy, and there would be no kind of impact of what you've been doing. But your tendency is to ignore what your body is saying and to push through that. And then you end up having a kind of crash on the other side. So you might have a goal that you set to stop activity before you reach that point. And your goal is to initially, let's say, to get through a week of not crossing the line of spending more energy than you've got available. And if you probably know well what the warning signs are, be it becoming over-adrenalized, so going from being tired to tired and wired, be it kind of the feeling you get where there's the kind of, the energy goes out of your system, be it that you don't sleep, but whatever the kind of warning sign is, that if you've got to the point of recovery where you're relatively symptom-free at rest, but symptoms flare when you go past a certain point, then the goal could be to have no symptom flares for a week. Or if you're at the point where you have consistent symptoms, but there are certain times that they get worse, the goal could be to not have the worsening of those symptoms. But whatever it may be, it's rather than saying, I can't have goals because I know that if I have goals, I end up pushing myself. It's how can you have goals which actually feel they're going to support the progress that you need to be making. Could be goals around kind of practical things support recovery. As I say, could be goals around having specific behaviors that you want to change or habits that you want to cultivate and make that the goal. So it's much easier to have, I'm going to change arms. It's much easier to have goals that we actually feel like we succeed in doing, because then you feed more of a sense of achievement and self-worth. If you keep setting goals and you keep failing at those goals because you're setting goals based upon activity level and that pushing activity level doesn't help, then you don't feel like you want to set goals. If you set very small, but kind of potentially very significant, achievable goals that you know that you can stick to, and then you do it for a short period of time. So let's say you set a goal for a week. You do it for a week. Do you then reset that goal for another week? Or maybe you set it for 2 weeks, or maybe you add an element. But when you set goals, it shouldn't be a feeling of, oh my God, I'm not sure if I can do that. It should be a feeling of, if I bring my attention and my commitment to this, it absolutely feels achievable that I can do that. And if the goal you're setting is much larger than that, then it'd be better to break the goal down into a series of stages. So, if the goal, let's say you're at stage 3, and the goal is that you're on path to be able to attend, let's say, a friend's wedding in 3 months. My recommendation would be, rather than having that be the goal, I would break down what the steps are towards that. And maybe that's a step of taking a longer car journey. Maybe that's a step of being more flexible in terms of the food you're eating. Maybe that's a goal of spending more time around other people. But I would take a larger goal and break it into a series of smaller goals, and then I would focus on the habits and the behaviors that you want to cultivate to facilitate it, not the actual amount of activity which you are doing and achieving. I'd set the goals short and reset, or bring in kind of more elements to the goal, so you have lots of wins along the way, rather than the goal is this big thing in the distance and it feels like you either have a massive accomplishment or a massive failure. Much better to have lots of little steps along the way to that. I think that's all the things I wanted to say. I think set goals, set appropriate goals. If you want to go deeper into it, revisit the videos that I did 2 years ago, the first 2 Facebook Lives. You can find them on the blog at theoptimalhealthclinic.com. Set it up so you win. And then when you do win, be warm and kind towards yourself. It's the danger is you achieve a goal and go, it wasn't very hard anyway, I've got to set a harder one. Celebrate the achievements and the successes upon the way. Recognize getting through a day with ME chronic fatigue is harder than getting through a day of pushing yourself to climb a mountain, where you get to do the thing that, if you're an achiever, where you actually get to be an achiever and do the thing that you feel comfortable doing. The not achieving, setting a goal to not push yourself, is a much harder goal when you're an achiever than setting a goal to push yourself. But it's an effective goal. It's a goal that's actually going to support and cultivate recovery, as opposed to be getting in the way of it. So I hope that's been useful. We've got some exciting evolutions of Facebook Live coming in the next few months. We've got our first of these sessions with Helen Lynham, Director of Nutrition, in early February. We've got some recovery calls that are being lined up. So we're going to start to bring more of the Optimal Health Clinic team into these calls, have some more nutrition elements to these calls, and more recovery stories. And we also have some pretty cool plans for the year as it unfolds as well, but more on those in time. But I hope that's been useful. Perhaps share your goals in the comments underneath. Be interesting to hear what different people are focusing towards. Always feel free to share suggestions of topics and things you'd like to see covered in these Facebook Lives. You can either put them in the comments or you can email jenny@theoptimalhealthclinic.com. Thanks for watching and Happy New Year again.